Rev up your engines!
Henry Rothman says, is it bad to put full synthetic oil in a car that only requires a synthetic blend, a 2014 Buick LaCrosse? There's no such thing as requiring a synthetic blend. The only thing that they require is a certain viscosity oil, and that's what you need. Synthetic oil is just regular oil that's been purified with acid or steam, except for that one that's made from actual natural gas in Saudi Arabia somewhere, where they take natural gas and they compress it and turn it into oil, which is kind of a silly thing because it's a net loss process. But they got all this gas they flare out there, and instead of flaring it, they're turning it into oil, so they're using it for something. But most of them are just normal oil that's purified. You can use synthetic blend, full synthetic, it doesn't matter. It all mixes together. A synthetic blend is just synthetic with some non-synthetic, and a full synthetic is full synthetic. So me personally, I just use full synthetic these days. There are so many companies out there that are making it. It used to be decades ago, some of them had problems. They didn't have the right additives in them, but they know how to put the additives in now, so it doesn't really matter. Robert Cesario says, Scotty, what do you recommend for a first tranny service on an Acura? 75,000 kilometers. Transmission flush or a change? Is there harm or benefit to one over the other? Yes, there is. I would never flush any automatic transmission. You flush them, you put a machine, pump stuff through. It can often pump dirt and get it stuck in solenoids. I have seen people have transmissions flushed. After they flushed, they shifted bad when they shifted perfectly fine before. And I've seen them where after a flush, they slip and they didn't slip before. Only drain and fill. I would never flush a transmission. I just wouldn't. The only time I tell people, well, if you want to take pot luck, say you got a tranny that is running like crap, shifts horrible, banging, clanging, slips, what the heck? Try a flush. Maybe it'll help it. It's shot anyway, right? In that case, maybe give it a try. But I've seen too many transmissions that were flushed that had problems after the flush that I'd never advise anybody to flush. One Mystic One says, I have an F-150. It hangs in transmission gears too long. 2006, 230,000 miles. It shifts late at 2,800 to 3,000 RPMs through every gear. No codes, tranny fluid's good. I change the fluid every 60,000 miles. Well, basically, old age. It's just wearing out. Now, if you want to try this, I've had great luck with it. It's called Lube Guard. And you can get the Lube Guard additive, take 12 ounces, suck it out of the transmission, put the 12 ounces of Lube Guard in and drive it and see what happens at 200 or 300 miles. If it starts shifting better, that helped. Now, if it doesn't, just live with it because you'd have to rebuild the whole transmission. Doing it in every gear, it's just flat wearing out. But this Lube Guard, it often can lubricate inside so that it shifts a lot smoother. It's worth a try. I mean, the can of the stuff's less than 20 bucks. Take out that amount, pour that amount back in, see what happens. I've had some good luck with it. I did one the other day. Boy, it went from making noises, Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I put it in, and went from making noises, and it didn't make any noise at all after 2 or 3 days of driving it. So, hey, give it a try. Sasha says, my rear tires wore out twice as fast as the front ones in a front-wheel drive. I got a Ford Mondeo. I had laser calibration done. The rear tires have worn out faster than the front. I don't transport heavy stuff. 99% of the time the trunk is empty. In 2021, September, I bought a new set of tires, and now the back ones wore out twice as much as the front ones. And they were worn evenly, too. Normally, the alignment's wrong. You had four-wheel alignment done, so the alignment's fine. And you say they're wearing evenly, so that shows the alignment's fine. If the alignment was off, they would wear unevenly. You say they're wearing evenly. Logically speaking, if they did all their balancing and alignment doesn't shake when you go down the road correctly, I am thinking you got a problem with your braking system in your car. Okay, it's 2011, it's 12 years old. For some reason, if your rear brakes are activating more than the front brakes, it will wear the rear brakes because they're stopping the car, and that wears the tires more. First thing I do is say, jack up the car and spin the rear wheels. If you see they drag, they're dragging. And if they drag, the tires will wear out faster in the back than the front. That's the only real logical thing I can see. If they're dragging. And as I said, if they're also applying themselves wrong, if the equalizer is wrong and it's not making most of the power go to the front, it's making a lot of it go to the back, that will wear the rear tires. It sounds like a braking problem to me. I'd have that checked out first. Rafa Gucia says, why won't my Jetta start after I refuel? 2007, Volkswagen Wolfsburg. When I tank it with gas, it doesn't start. I have to push a little gas and I start it, it's okay. I can off and on start the engine thousands of times until the next pit stop and I fill it with fuel. What's happening is, when you fill it with fuel, those fumes are not going to their correct place from the EVAP system. Now, a lot of times, if you turn your car off and you let it sit and you try to start it, it's because the engine's flooding out because like the fuel injectors are leaking or something. But you said you can start and stop it a million times after you fill it up. The rest of the weeks, whatever, until you need to fill it up again, they can't be leaking because they'd leak just the same whether you're at the gas station or at the home or the grocery store, whatever, right? It's only happening the only time you fill it up. So it's got to be an EVAP problem. Somehow, instead of those fumes going through the EVAP canister and then filtering out to the atmosphere and the hydrocarbons stay in the EVAP canister, yours is sending those fumes into the engine. Now when you crank it, it's getting too much fuel and you got to give it gas to make it go. That's the only thing that's logical. So you're going to have that EVAP system checked with a fine-tooth comb. It's a very complex computer-run system on that Volkswagen, but you got an EVAP problem somehow. All checked out to see why it's doing it and not sending the fumes into the EVAP canister, but sending them into the engine intake manifold. It's fixable. Could be a real stinker. And if it only does it when you fill it up and you give it a little gas and it starts, I'd live with it. It is a Volkswagen and it's 2007. So, the thing's 16 years old. It's old. I personally would live with something like that. Brett Williams says, Scotty, what's the best OBD code reader under $200? Well, that's kind of a weird price range. I know good ones for $30 for what they do a lot. And I know great ones that are $300 to $400. But the $200 range is kind of no man's land. I would say, look at what's available with X-Tool and look what's out there with, say, Launch and around their $200 scan tools. And those are, they can be decent. But from my experience, if you're willing to spend $200, let me tell you, you're better off getting the Autels, OTCs, X-Tool ones that are like $300, $350 because they can blow you away. The $200 ones have never blown me away. But today, the $300 to $350 and these Chinese company ones, they can blow you away with information. You're better buying one of those. The $200 ones, they promise a lot of stuff and they usually don't work all that well. But the $300 to $350 ones do, and if you want to go under that 100 or something, you can get some pretty good ones for under 100 that do a lot less, but it's a lot less money too. It just depends on how far you go. The $200 ones, you're kind of in a no man's land there. I've never really found any that really impressed me. Well, here's some of the most disappointing cars of 2022. I have to agree with Consumer Reports on this one. A lot of times they come up with squirrely ideas, but in the case of these cars, I gotta agree. The first one is the Acura Integra. Now, they're calling these cars disappointing. They're not calling them bad cars or great cars. They're saying disappointing. One of your viewers brought one when I was in Rhode Island. I made a video. You can check it out if you want. It's basically a Honda Civic, right? And people are even saying, what difference is it from the Civic Si other than it says Acura Integra? The original Acura Integras were cutting out real fast, little sporty cars. This thing is basically a Honda Civic. Nothing wrong with a Honda Civic, but why make something, call it an Acura Integra when it's really just a Honda Civic Si? And it costs more. It wasn't particularly fast, didn't have any cutting edge stuff, and I gotta agree with Consumer Reports on this one. $3,000 more for the Acura Integra, which is pretty much a Honda Civic Si. So if you like the car, my advice, get the Honda Civic Si. Now another one is the Infiniti QX60. Not a horrible vehicle, but disappointing because it's pretty much the same as the Nissan Pathfinder. But while the Pathfinder started $36,000, the Infiniti starts at $49,000. Those are both starting. You can pay a heck of a lot more for both of them, but you can see you're paying $13,000 more for the $49,000 Infiniti, and basically it's the Nissan Pathfinder. A lot of times people just pay for a name. I kind of agree. They're not horrible vehicles, but they're disappointing. You pay all that extra money, and you really don't get anything extra. And the last disappointment is the Rivian R1T. Now, if you remember a couple of years ago, one of these guys picked it as Truck of the Year, right? They just started making them. They picked it as Truck of the Year, and everybody says, hey, it's disappointing. It's not a terrible electric truck, but hey, it's a truck. But it's all this luxury stuff. It's not really a work truck. You can't really use it as a work truck. It's not set up for a work truck. And the regenerative braking is horrible. It actually makes the passengers seasick. So you end up with getting passengers that are throwing up. I found that hilarious. Regenerative braking, you got to get used to anyway. But their system's kind of aggressive, and you really feel it. The way it goes blah, blah, when you take your foot off the gas, it makes the passengers sick. According to people on this Rivian forum, they say, and I quote, "You as a driver can learn to use the accelerator differently to minimize the motion for passengers. You're paying all that money for an electric truck, and you got to learn how to drive it so your passengers don't get sick? I don't think that's great. That's rather... Disappointing. For once, I agree with the Consumer Reports. I found all three of these disappointing vehicles, especially for the money they're charging for them. You can pay that kind of money. Your passengers are getting sick. Maybe not buy one. Take my warning. Especially, let's say you got a husband or wife that gets motion sickness easily. They might hate that thing and never want to ride around in it. So think about that before you buy one. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.